Today I'm doing an install of the Old Man EMU Dakar leaf packs. Part number there, CSO47R, is for 2005 and up Tacoma. This is going to be going on a 2013 double cab short bed. I've already done the driver's side. You can see that in the bottom there, how much smaller it is. A couple things to know about the springs. The plus sign here just means it's a little above spec when they do it from the factory. If it has a 0, that means it's exact spec. If it has a minus, that means it's just below, but they're still good enough. Over here to the centering pin, had to trim off the tip of it just using a Dremel, just so when you put the bump stop on, it won't hit. And then these had to be ordered separately, the Old Man EMU bushings. I ordered mine through 4-Wheel Parts, and we'll just install those into there later. So we'll take a look at the installed leaf on the driver's side. So here's the almost completed install. There's just a couple things left loose to give us some more clearance, like the emergency brake line bracket that mounts to the leaves there. They said to leave the U-bolts a little loose to help with installation on the other side. I have it installed with the Bilstein 5100s that I got through Toy Tech. And the only other thing we loosened here is this brake line bracket on the axle. It just allows it to have a little more play so that you're not putting too much strain on the lines. I'm going to start with the removal of the shock first. The rear shock's pretty easy. If you have the Bilstein 5100s, a 3/16 Allen wrench and 17mm open end wrench works. And once the nut is loose, we'll just pop it off the cap and the rubber bumper. And just compress the shock. And then we'll just move it out of the way a little bit. Let it extend out. And then we'll work on the bottom bolt. For the bottom bolt of the rear shock, you should just have to get a 17mm socket on the nut, and usually don't have to hold the bolt head. Remove the nut and the washer, and luckily these are fairly new, so the bolt slides right out. And you kind of have to work it back and forth to slide it out of the mount. And now with our shock removed, and I just put the bolt back in there so I don't lose it, I'm going to take off the emergency brake line that's attached to the spring. This is a 12mm socket. There's no nut or anything on the back side. You just have to make sure you transfer this bolt over to the new leaves. Now on the bottom of the axle, we're ready to loosen the U-bolts. The ones that came with the Toy Tech lift are 22mm nuts. So once you have all the nuts loose, we'll drop this plate here. And these U-bolts are still pretty long. I hadn't trimmed them because I knew I was not going to keep the blocks here. Pop those off. And you'll see your bump stop up here that was held down by the U-bolts. It just comes right off. And now we'll lower the springs so the axle will drop low enough we can pull this block out, and then we'll have room to pull out our old leaf springs and put into the new Old Man EMU springs. So as you see, I just have a floor jack under the rear differential. That's what we're going to use to lower it, obviously. And as you watch here, we'll get our room to pull the block out. Now, remove the aluminum block that was in there. And we'll have plenty of room to slide our new springs in. Alright, so now with the block out, focus on this bolt here, holding the front of the leaf in, and then in the back you've got your shackle. And we'll just remove this bottom bolt, and that whole piece will come out with the spring. So we'll start with removing the rear lower shackle bolt. That's a 19mm, and you shouldn't have to hold the bolt head on this one either. We'll just have to pound that in a little bit with the hammer, and then what I did last time is just use the punch and push it through the other side. The forward bolt's a little trickier because you can't get a ratchet and socket on it, so you have to use an open end wrench. That's from the inside there. And with the bolt off the other side, you can just use the socket and kind of back it out a bit. Once you've got it out a bit, you should be able to work it out. Just pull and twist. I'm not going to go all the way right now. I'll work on the back side. We'll just get it ready. Now we have that forward bolt almost ready to come out. I'm just going to push the F bolt through a bit. You can tell there's no real resistance from the springs, which is good. I'm just going to go through with this one and leave the punch in. Something like that. Now it's time to get that front bolt out. I just kind of supported the spring here with another jack stand, just so it doesn't drop and smack on the axle when I pull it out. Hopefully not damage anything. But the back is free. It just has the punch that I put in there holding it. So I'll just drop the front and then I'll pull the punch out of the back. Alright, now to pull the front bolt out. It helps again to twist it out and use the threads. And that side is free. So I'm going to pull the jack stand and then let it rest gently on the axle. There we go. So I'm getting ready to pull the pin out, and what I'm going to do is just take the whole leaf, drop this side down, and kind of glide it over the axle here, and just slide it under the truck and then pull it out. They're a little heavier than I thought, but not too bad. So I got the leaf removed from the back side, and just, you can see how I kind of slid it down and just let it rest on the floor. And then we'll slide it underneath. That's it. Then we'll swap over the bushings and shackle, and we'll be ready to put it back in. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm gonna remove this shackle here. Again, just turn the nut. The bolt head's actually notched on the back, so it shouldn't turn. And then we'll transfer it over to the new leaf. With the bolt that runs through this bushing here, you're gonna have to use a backup wrench, just because it tries to spin the whole bushing inside the leaf there. Once that nut's free, pop the bolt out. And we'll just transfer it over to the new one. So for the new bushings, they're polyurethane, so the best I could find for information on greasing them, if it's even needed, was to use white lithium. So I'm just going to put a little bit on the inside. You can see where there's a groove there, but none on the outside, because you don't want it to slip and rotate inside the leaf. So got a little bit of white lithium grease in there, and we'll go ahead and pop them in. So we're about ready to put the shackle back onto the new leaf spring. And if you look at the bolt, you can see there's notches in the head of it that actually kind of lock it in place. And you can see the grooves where they were. So I'm going to put that on now. Shackle's on the leaf, and just use a little thread locker in the nut. it might cure by the time we end up torquing it, but we'll just want to get it hand tight, get it snug, and we don't want to torque it until the weight of the vehicle is on it. So we'll do that later. Might snug it up with the ratchet just a little bit, but it is ready to get put in. And that is basically it. I'm going to slide this back under the vehicle the way I took it out, kind of bring it up, rest it on the axle, slide the back into position. I'm going to do the front bolt first, because then I can kind of move the shackle around to get that one in place after. It just seems easier. And then if your centering pin isn't lining up, obviously just kind of rock your axle back or forth and it'll drop in. The other side didn't take that much tweaking, so hopefully this one goes just as smooth. So I got the front pin installed, and that one, it was pretty easy. This back one you can see is a little high, but all I'm going to do is just lower the jack and it should line right up. I went a little too far in that lowering the jack. It got away from me, but I just brought it up a little bit and you can see the hole lines up, and we'll just slide the bolt through. And with all the bolts on the springs, the forward, aft, and the shackles, just leave them a little snug. Don't quite tighten them yet again until the weight is down on the vehicle. And with these two, you can see the notches where the bolt head will sit. Alright, with all the bolts installed, I'm just going to jack the axle up a bit, put some weight on the springs, put the U-bolts on, and reinstall the shock. Try and get everything all buttoned up. Here's the bump stops. These are just the factory stops that I'm going to reuse. You can see why you'd have to trim the centering bolt here. I took it almost flush, not quite, but it would hit in the rubber there. So obviously installing the shock again is just the reverse to what you did to take it off. I'm going to put the bottom mounting first and then compress it and put it through the mount on top. Alright, so finished the install. Reattached all the little brackets there. Torqued the U-bolts. I had to end up cutting them a little shorter, close to a ½ an inch, just so I could get my socket on there. I didn't want to go too short in case I have to do any shimming for any driveline vibration. I've heard it both ways. Some people require shims, some don't, so we'll see how that goes. Now I'm gonna throw the wheels back on it, get it on the ground, and torque the rest of the suspension. And one thing I did notice is when you put the emergency brake cables back on, the new Leafs have this rubber like friction piece there, and this clip won't seat over it, so you have to just kind of pull it to the side and everything works fine after that. So here it is on the ground. I didn't measure before I started, but as of now the bottom of the fender is at 41 inches above the ground. But everything seems to fit nicely. Now I just need to torque all the suspension bolts, and that'll be it. So now that we got the weight on the wheels here, when we go to torque these bolts in the shackle, we're going to need a backup wrench so that we're not twisting the bushing inside. When you take them off, you don't seem to need a backup wrench at all, but we will when we tighten it. For the forward mounts, again, you can't really get any sort of torque wrench in there. So for now, I just tightened it really good with an open end wrench. And then tomorrow I'll get a dog bone and finish torquing that. But should be good for now. And that is it. That was the install of the Old Man EMU Dakar leaf packs on a 2013 Tacoma double cab short bed. In the front I have the Toy Tech 3-inch lift, comes with the Ibach coils and the adjustable Bill Stein 5100s.